Welcome back. She flipped him over as if he were a wooden doll, felt in his back pockets and held up some coins. Now you've got none, she laughed, and before he could sit up, she'd gone. Jim had been crouching on the other side of the road watching. The boy saw him looking and turned away, covering up his face with his hands. He stayed hunched up just as the woman had left him. Jim stood up and clicked his fingers to make the boy look at him. Then he started to dance, just a few skipping steps. Laugh, he wanted to say, but then, it's all right, laugh. It was then that the boy seemed to make up his mind to join him. Make up his own mind about him. He jumped up and joined Jim, kicking up his legs in imitation of Jim's dance, holding his arms high above his head so his laces fluttered round like maypole ribbons. His pink, shrimpy toes wriggled above the flaps of his boot soles. And with each step he took, he slapped his foot down again, so firmly on the road that the muck splattered round him like flies on a cow. He danced with his eyes closed and his mouth wide open, a kind of trance, and then moved, and then the more the watchers clapped, the wilder his dance became. Jim could hardly keep up with him, laughing, and even Rosie had to smile. She sold off most of her trailer to one family. Here, she said, shrimps or whatever your name is, and you, Skipping Jim, you can finish off these for me. I'm going back to get some more. I've never sold 2 whole trayfuls like that in one day. Never. You should go on the shows, you two. You should join the travelling circus. The 2 boys sat side by side near a night watchman's fire, peeling the shrimps with their teeth and spitting off the shells. I love shrimps, I do, said the boy. But I've never pinched none off of Rosie's store, never. You wouldn't dare, said Jim. She'd pickle you if you did. I dare do anything, I do, the boy said. But Rosie, she's like me. She ain't got no more money than me, she ain't. Are you really called Shrimps? Jim asked him. The boy shrugged. Shrimps is what they call me, and Shrimps'll do. Sounds like a funny name to me, Jim said. Who was that woman? The boy narrowed his eyes. My ma, he said. Only she kicked me out years ago, didn't she? She only comes looking for me when she wants money for gin. Not much of a ma, she ain't. Where do you live then? Depends, doesn't it? See, if I makes coppers or two selling laces, I spends it on lodgings house for the night. Cool. On your own? On me own, with about 50 other geezers, what snore their heads off all night. It's like a thunderstorm sometimes, and if I don't have no money, he shrugged, I sleeps where I can, don't I? Where the bobbies won't find me. That's where I live. He jerked his thumb at Jim's jacket, where the sacking shawl had slipped away. I spent a week in that place, worse than anything I ever knowed. The workhouse was. Worse than sleeping in a barn full of rats, and I done that a time or two. Worse than that, Jim agreed. Worse than sleeping in a sack full of eels. The boys both giggled. Eels? Snorted Shrimps. Eels is charming company. I ate an eel once, when it was still alive. It wriggled down my throat and round my belly, and up again and out through my mouth. Bellies? Said the eel. Boys' bellies is nearly as bad as the workhouse, and it wriggled off home. It was all right, that eel. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and looked at Jim sideways. You got a brother, Skipping Jim? No, said Jim. Have you? Used to have, but I ain't got one now. Shrimps dug the flaps of his bootlaces in the mud. I'd like a brother to go round with. So would I, said Jim. The 2 boys stared straight ahead, saying nothing. The watchman poked his fire so the flames hissed. He got slowly to his feet. 5 of the clock, he shouted, and trudged off to the light up the lamps between the houses. 5 o'clock, my lovelies. Gotta go, Shrimp said. I've got a queue to see. People often break their bootlaces when they're standing in queues. Just snaps off, they do. If I crawls round and tweaks them when they ain't looking. Will you be here tomorrow? Shrimps looked down at Jim. He took a bunch of laces out of his pocket and swirled them round his head. Then he shrugged and ran off. That night, as Jim ran home to his shed, his head was busy with his new thoughts. There was easily enough room for another small boy to squeeze in. It would be warmer with the two of them. Rosie wouldn't mind, especially if Shrimps got his food in the usual way. Be nice to have a brother, he thought as he ran. A brother like Shrimps. Real nice that would be. It would be a long, long time before he slept so well again. His sleep that night was broken by a stomping of the boots and a screech the cat gave as the door was pulled open. It was as if someone had let the river in. A candle was held towards Jim, and he opened his eyes. Two men stood looking down at him, their eyes black holes in the candlelight, their beards froths of fur. Jim recognised one as Rosie's grandfather. The other man was a square with a box-like face and hair that slanted across his eyes like slipping thatch. "This boy, d'you mean?" He gave Jim a kick. Jim sat up in fright, clutching his sack around him. "I knew I'd seen the lad running in here," Rosie's grandfather wheezed. "A little rat. He is skulking in my shed. I'll weasel him out," I thought to myself. "I'll winkle him out when the time is right." "Please, mister," said Jim, "I ain't doing no harm." "Stand up," the square man said. His eyes bulged above his fat cheeks as if they were lamps trying to make their own way through the thatch. Jim struggled to his feet. "He's only a twig," the square man said. "There's no bones in him hardly." "He'll grow," said the grandfather. "I know his type. He'll grow big and powerful. You can train him up, Nick. When he's only that big, won't give you no trouble that size. He's just right. And while he's training, he won't eat much." Nick grunted. "Well, he's here, and I'm stuck for a boy, so I'll take him." Grandpa sighed with pleasure. Nick fumbled in his pocket and gave him a coin which the old man held out to the candle, chuckling. "Come on, boy," Nick said. "Bring your bed. You'll need that." Jim stumbled after him, pulling the sack around his shoulders for warmth, and the door screeched behind him as the old man fastened it to. "Tell Rosie," Jim began, and Grandpa swung round and snarled at him. "She won't need no telling. I'll thank her. Shall I, for stealing food from her grandfather's mouth to stuff in yours? Go on with grimy Nick. You've got a home and a job now. You've nothing more to want in life, that's what." He walked slowly back to his cottage, laughing aloud in his coughing way, spinning the coin that grimy Nick had given him, so it gleamed in the air like a little sun. Oh dear, poor Jim. So what do you think is going to happen? What type of person do you think that this Nick is? Do you think Nick will be kind? I wonder. Can't wait for the next chapter. Okay, take care everybody.